My name is Emily Parker and I'm 28 years old. What started as a simple early return from work turned into the most terrifying experience of my life. When I opened my apartment door that afternoon, I never expected to find two strange men in my bedroom claiming to be maintenance workers. Something felt off about their explanation, but I couldn't place it. By the time I discovered what they were really doing there, it was already too late. The next morning, loud knocking jolted me awake. The police were at the door with news that made my blood run cold. Before I dive into my story, let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like and subscribe button to support other survivors like me. Before the incident that would change everything, my life followed a comfortable, predictable rhythm. I had worked hard to build my career as a marketing executive at a mid-sized agency in Boston. After 5 years of renting, I had finally saved enough for a down payment on a beautiful one-bedroom condo in a renovated brownstone. The neighborhood was exactly what I'd dreamed of: tree-lined streets, local coffee shops where baristas knew my order, and just enough urban energy to keep things interesting. My typical weekday started at 6 a.m. with a quick run along the Charles River if weather permitted, followed by a shower and my sacred 15 minutes of coffee and news before heading to the office. I'd arrive by 8:30 am, tackle emails, attend strategy meetings, and coordinate with clients until at least 6 p.m. Marketing never sleeps, especially when you're handling accounts for tech startups with founders who email at all hours. My boyfriend Ryan and I had been together for almost 2 years. He worked as a sales director for a software company, which meant frequent travel, sometimes gone for a week at a time visiting clients across the country. We made it work with video calls and by making the most of our time together. He was supportive of my career and understood the demands of my schedule. When he was traveling, I'd often use the evenings to catch up with friends, work late, or simply enjoy having the remote control all to myself. The week before everything happened, I'd noticed a few minor issues around my condo. The bathroom faucet had developed a persistent drip, and one of the windows in my bedroom wasn't sealing properly, letting in cold air. Nothing major, but as a new homeowner, I was eager to address problems before they worsened. I'd sent an email to the building management company, Sullivan Properties, requesting maintenance. Denise, the property manager, had been quick to respond. "Hi Emily, thanks for letting us know about these issues. We have maintenance scheduled for next Tuesday between 9 a.m. and 12 p.m. Please confirm if this works with your schedule, or we can reschedule. Best, Denise." I had confirmed the appointment, arranging to work from home that morning. That was supposed to be 6 days away, not today. My best friend Jessica was the only person besides Ryan who had a key to my place. We'd exchanged keys years ago when we lived in the same apartment building, and continued the practice even after I bought my condo. It gave me peace of mind knowing someone trustworthy could access my place in an emergency. Jessica worked as a kindergarten teacher and lived just a few blocks away, making her the perfect emergency contact. The day everything started, I had been preparing for a major presentation with a potential new client. I'd spent weeks analyzing their market position and developing a comprehensive campaign strategy. The meeting was scheduled for 3 p.m., giving me the morning to finalize my slides and practice my delivery. But at 1:30 am, I received an email that the client needed to reschedule due to a sudden conflict. My calendar had unexpectedly cleared for the afternoon. My boss, noting how many extra hours I'd been putting in lately, suggested I take the rest of the day off. "You've been burning the candle at both ends, Emily. Take the win and enjoy your surprise free time. The presentation looks great, and we'll be ready when they reschedule." I couldn't remember the last time I'd left work early. The thought of a few unexpected hours to myself felt like finding money in an old coat pocket. I could pick up groceries without the evening rush, maybe even catch up on the book that had been sitting on my nightstand for weeks. With Ryan away in Chicago for a 3-day conference, I was looking forward to some quiet alone time. As I packed up my laptop and said goodbye to my colleagues, I had no idea that my ordinary life was about to be shattered. Sometimes I still think about that moment, the last few minutes of blissful ignorance before everything changed. If only I had stayed at the office, worked on another project, or gone shopping instead of heading straight home. But there's no point in those thoughts now. What happened, happened, and it began the moment I decided to go home early. The autumn afternoon was unseasonably warm as I walked from the tea station to my brownstone. I'd taken a detour to pick up a chai latte from my favorite cafe, planning to enjoy it while catching up on my reading. It was just after 2 p.m., a time when I would normally be deep in work meetings, not strolling through my neighborhood with the luxury of free time. As I rounded the corner onto my street, I noticed an unmarked white van parked in front of my building. It wasn't particularly unusual. Delivery vehicles and service trucks frequently stopped along our street. Still, something about it caught my attention. Perhaps it was the way it was double parked, or maybe some subconscious part of my brain was already sensing that something wasn't right. I climbed the steps to the building's entrance, punched in my code, and stepped into the lobby. The building was quiet, as most residents were at work. Our 4-story brownstone housed 8 units, with 2 apartments on each floor. Mine was on the 3rd floor, overlooking a small courtyard in the back rather than the street. As I climbed the stairs to my floor, I first heard the voices, male voices, muffled but clearly coming from the direction of my apartment. I paused, confused. Had I forgotten about a scheduled maintenance visit? No, I was certain the appointment was for next week. Could it be Ryan, back early from his trip? Impossible, he would have texted me, and besides, he wouldn't have brought someone else. I approached my door cautiously, my keys gripped tightly in my hand. The voices grew more distinct, 2 men speaking in low tones. I could make out snippets of conversation about measurements and something about finishing up soon. The reasonable explanation was that building management had rescheduled the maintenance without informing me. It was annoying but not alarming. When I inserted my key into the lock, the voices immediately went silent. I opened the door and called out, "Hello, building maintenance." The response was delayed by several seconds, long enough to raise the first real flag of concern. "Yes, ma'am, in the bedroom," a voice called back. I set my purse and coffee on the kitchen counter and walked through my living room toward the bedroom. 2 men in gray uniforms stood near my window. One was holding a measuring tape, while the other seemed to be making notes on a clipboard. Both looked startled by my presence. "Hi there," I said, maintaining a friendly tone despite my growing unease. "I wasn't expecting anyone today. Did Sullivan Properties reschedule the appointment?" The taller of the 2 men, late 30s, with dark hair and a neatly trimmed beard, stepped forward with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Yes, ma'am. We got called in for emergency maintenance checks on this side of the building. Apparently, there's been some water damage reported in the unit below yours, so we're checking all the windows and walls for potential leaks." It sounded plausible, but something felt off about their explanation. The second man, shorter with light brown hair and glasses, barely made eye contact with me. "That's strange," I replied. "I didn't receive any notification about this." "Management was supposed to email everyone," the taller man said quickly. "We just go where they send us. We're almost finished here." I glanced around my bedroom, trying to determine if anything was out of place. My usually tidy space looked mostly undisturbed, but I noticed that my jewelry box had been moved slightly from its usual position on my dresser. A framed photo of Ryan and me seemed to be angled differently than before. These were subtle changes, the kind you might notice only if you lived alone and were particular about the placement of your belongings. "What exactly are you checking for?" I asked, moving closer to the window where they claimed to be working. "Just making sure the seals are tight and there's no moisture getting in," the taller man explained, holding up the measuring tape as if to demonstrate. "Water damage can be expensive if not caught early." The second man had begun packing up tools into a small bag with remarkable speed. "We're actually all set here," he said, his first complete sentence since I'd entered. "Everything looks good, no signs of leaks." Their body language had changed completely. What had appeared to be a methodical inspection was now a rushed exit. The taller man collected his clipboard and nodded. "That's right, all good here. We'll let management know everything checks out." "Could I see your work order?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual despite the alarm bells now ringing loudly in my head. The men exchanged a quick glance. "It's all electronic now," the taller one said, patting his pocket. "They send everything to our phones, but you can call Sullivan if you have any questions." As they moved toward the bedroom door, I noticed the shorter man slip something small into his pocket, something that had been on my nightstand. "Wait," I said firmly. "I'd like to see some ID, please. Who exactly do you work for?" Another glance between them. The atmosphere in the room had shifted from uncomfortable to tense. "We're subcontractors for Sullivan," the taller man said. "Listen, we've got another appointment we're running late for. You can confirm everything with the property manager." They moved past me into the living room, walking quickly toward the exit. I followed, maintaining distance but determined not to let them leave without proper identification. "I'd still like to see some ID," I insisted as they reached the door, "or at least tell me the name of your company." "Boston Property Services," the taller man said without turning around. "Have a good day, ma'am." And with that they were gone, footsteps echoing down the stairwell at a pace just short of running. I stood in my doorway, heart pounding, as the implications of what had just happened began to sink in. Those men hadn't been sent by my property manager. They had been in my home, in my bedroom, touching my things, but why? I closed the door and turned the deadbolt, then added the chain for good measure. Something was very wrong, and I needed to find out what it was. With shaking hands, I pulled out my phone and called Sullivan Properties. The brief hold music felt eternal before Denise answered. Emily, how are you? What can I help you with today? Denise, did you send maintenance workers to my unit today? I asked, already knowing the answer but needing confirmation. No, your appointment is still scheduled for next Tuesday, she replied, confusion evident in her voice. Why do you ask? My stomach dropped, because I just came home to find two men in my apartment who claimed they were sent by Sullivan to check for water damage. Denise's sharp intake of breath told me everything I needed to know. Emily, we didn't send anyone to your unit today. None of our maintenance staff or contractors are scheduled for your building at all today. They said they were from Boston Property Services, I added, pacing nervously across my living room. We don't work with any company by that name, Denise confirmed. Emily, this is serious. You should call the police right away. After thanking her and promising to update her later, I ended the call and immediately began checking my apartment. My first concern was whether anything had been stolen. I went to my jewelry box and opened it with trembling fingers. All my pieces appeared to be there: the pearl earrings from my grandmother, the silver bracelet Ryan had given me for our first anniversary, even the expensive watch I rarely wore. I checked my laptop on the desk, still there, my tablet in the drawer untouched. In the living room, my TV and sound system remained in place. Whatever those men were doing, simple theft didn't appear to be their motive. I called Jessica next, needing to confirm she hadn't let anyone into my apartment. Jess, quick question, you haven't let any maintenance workers into my place today, have you? No, I've been at school all day, she replied. Why? What's going on? I explained the situation briefly, my voice cracking slightly as the reality of what had happened began to hit me. Oh my God, Emily, that's terrifying. Do you want me to come over? Not yet, I said. I need to figure out what's going on first. I'll call you back. As evening approached, my apartment no longer felt like the safe haven it had been that morning. Every sound from the hallway made me jump. I found myself checking and reeking the locks, peering through the peephole at regular intervals. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I decided to conduct a more thorough inspection of my bedroom, trying to determine exactly what the men had been doing. At first glance, nothing seemed amiss, but as I examined more carefully, I began to notice small disturbances. The bed had been made, but not quite the way I'd left it. The decorative pillows were arranged slightly differently. A stack of books on my nightstand had been rearranged. The curtains were drawn wider than I typically left them. Then I noticed something that made my blood run cold. In the corner of the room near the ceiling where the wall met was a tiny hole that hadn't been there before. It was small, no larger than a pinhead, but definitely new. My eyes darted around the room and I spotted another similar hole on the opposite wall. With growing horror, I grabbed my phone and searched small holes in wall-hidden cameras. The results confirmed my worst fears. These could indeed be drill holes for miniature surveillance cameras. The articles described how stalkers and voyeurs would install tiny pinhole cameras that were nearly impossible to detect without specialized equipment. My phone rang, startling me so badly I nearly dropped it. Ryan's name flashed on the screen. Hey babe, just checking in. His familiar voice came through, comforting despite the distance. How was your day? I hesitated, not wanting to worry him when he was halfway across the country, but I needed to tell someone who would understand the gravity of the situation. Ryan, something really strange and scary happened today, I began, then recounted the entire experience. Emily, this is serious, Ryan said, his voice tense. You need to call the police right now. Those weren't maintenance workers, they were up to something. But I don't have proof, I protested weakly. What if I'm overreacting? You're not overreacting, Ryan insisted. Trust your instincts. Those guys were in our home under false pretenses. That's breaking and entering at minimum. I'm changing my flight to come home tomorrow, but please call the police tonight. After we hung up, I sat on my couch, my mind racing with possibilities, each more disturbing than the last. Who were those men? What were they doing in my apartment? Were they planning to come back? And most troubling, were there cameras watching me right now? The thought was too unsettling. I couldn't stay here tonight. I called Jessica back. Can I stay at your place tonight? Of course, she said without hesitation. Do you want me to come get you? Please, I answered, relief washing over me at the thought of not being alone. While waiting for Jessica, I packed an overnight bag and continued examining my apartment. The more I looked, the more convinced I became that something was very wrong. Small items had been moved throughout the apartment. The bathroom towels were folded differently. Even my kitchen spice rack seemed to have been rearranged slightly. Jessica arrived 30 minutes later, and I nearly cried with relief when I opened the door to her familiar face. "Let's check for cameras before we go," she suggested after I'd explained my suspicions. "I've been watching too many crime shows, but I know they can be hidden in everyday objects." Together, we began examining picture frames, smoke detectors, and air vents, common hiding places according to my frantic internet research. We were about to give up when Jessica noticed that a small decorative clock on my bookshelf seemed oddly positioned. "Was this always facing this direction?" she asked, pointing to the clock. "I don't think so," I replied, moving closer to examine it. Jessica carefully picked up the clock and turned it over. There, disguised within the design, was a tiny camera lens and what appeared to be a microphone. "Oh my God," I whispered, my hands flying to my mouth. "This isn't mine. I've never seen this before." We stared at the device in horror, the full implication sinking in. Someone had been watching me, listening to me, invading my most private moments. "We're calling the police right now," Jessica said firmly, already dialing 911 on her phone. 911, what's your emergency?" Jessica handed me the phone, her eyes wide with concern. I took a deep breath and tried to keep my voice steady. "I need to report a break-in and surveillance equipment installed in my apartment without my knowledge." The dispatcher took my information calmly, asking me to clarify what had happened and whether I was currently safe. When I mentioned finding the hidden camera, her tone became more urgent. "Officers are being dispatched to your location now, ma'am. Please wait outside your apartment if you feel comfortable doing so." Jessica and I gathered my overnight bag and the camera we'd found, carefully wrapping it in a tissue without touching it directly. We waited in the hallway, jumping at every sound until the elevator doors opened and two uniformed officers stepped out. Officer Matthews, a tall woman with a no-nonsense demeanor, took the lead while her partner, Officer Chen, began examining the hidden camera device we'd found. "I'd like to take a look at your apartment, Ms. Parker," Officer Matthews said. "Can you show me where you found this device and where you saw the men working?" I led them through my apartment, pointing out the tiny drill holes in the bedroom walls and describing how various items had been moved. Officer Chen used his flashlight to examine the holes more closely. "These are definitely consistent with mounting brackets for micro cameras," he confirmed, "professional grade, from the look of it." They conducted a thorough search, finding two more devices, one disguised as a USB-wall charger in the bathroom and another hidden in a living room air vent. Each discovery felt like another violation, another intrusion into my private life. "We'll need to take these devices as evidence," Officer Matthews explained, carefully bagging each item. "Our tech team will analyze them to see if we can determine where they were transmitting to. In the meantime, I strongly advise you not to stay here tonight." "I'm staying with my friend," I assured her, gesturing to Jessica, who stood nearby, her face pale with shock. After filing the initial police report and answering dozens of questions, we were finally cleared to leave. Jessica drove us to her apartment in silence, both of us processing the horrifying reality of what had happened. "You can take my bed," Jessica offered as we entered her cozy one-bedroom apartment. "I'll sleep on the couch." "No way," I protested. "The couch is fine for me. You've already done so much." But the truth was, I didn't think I'd be sleeping much at all that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those men in my bedroom, imagined unseen eyes watching me through hidden cameras. I kept wondering how long this had been going on. Days, weeks. The thought made me physically ill. Jessica made us tea, and we sat at her kitchen table, the clock showing nearly midnight. "Do you have any idea who might have done this?" she asked gently. I shook my head, then paused. "Actually, there is someone, but it seems so extreme." "Who?" "Mark Donovan. He worked in my department until about 3 months ago. He was fired after he wouldn't stop asking me out despite me telling him I wasn't interested." Jessica's eyes widened. "The guy who kept sending you flowers even after you told him to stop?" "Yeah, he didn't take rejection well. He started showing up at places he knew I'd be: my favorite coffee shop, the gym, even that Italian restaurant Ryan and I go to. It was creepy, but he never did anything threatening, so I tried to brush it off as just a weird crush." "Emily, that's not a weird crush, that's stalking," Jessica said firmly. "Did you tell the police about him?" "No, I wasn't thinking clearly," I admitted. "I should call them tomorrow." Sleep was impossible. I tossed and turned on Jessica's couch, my mind racing with disturbing possibilities. Round 3 a.m., I gave up and reached for my phone. Maybe some mindless scrolling would distract me from the nightmare my life had suddenly become. Out of habit, I opened Instagram, only to freeze in horror at what I saw. Mark had posted a photo just yesterday, a seemingly innocent shot of a coffee shop, but it was my regular coffee shop. and in the background, partially blurred but unmistakable, was me at my usual table by the window. The caption read, "Some people never notice what's right in front of them, always watching, always waiting." With trembling fingers I scrolled through his feed, finding more disturbing content, photos of locations I frequented, cryptic captions that now seemed like thinly veiled references to me, and most terrifying of all, a photo of my building's exterior from just last week. I woke Jessica, showing her the posts with shaking hands. "We need to call the detectives right now," she insisted, fully awake despite the early hour. "This is evidence." By dawn neither of us had slept. We sat together on the couch, jumping at every sound outside the apartment, waiting for a more reasonable hour to call the police again. I'd called Ryan as well, who had managed to get on a red-eye flight and would be landing in Boston by mid-morning. "I feel like I'm in a nightmare," I whispered to Jessica as the first light of dawn filtered through her curtains. "How could this be happening?" "We'll figure it out," she promised, squeezing my hand. "The police are on it now. You're not alone." But despite her reassurance, I'd never felt more vulnerable in my life. The sanctuary of my home had been violated, my privacy had been invaded in the most intimate way, and somewhere out there, someone had been watching me, planning this elaborate intrusion into my life. I jumped as Jessica's phone rang, breaking the early morning silence. "Hello," she answered, then her eyes widened. "Yes, she's here with me, of course." She handed me the phone. "It's Detective Wilson from Boston PD. Ms. Parker, this is Detective Alicia Wilson from the Boston Police Department. I'm calling about the report you filed last night." The detective's voice was crisp and professional, but there was an undertone of urgency that made my heart race. "Yes, I'm here," I managed to reply. "My partner, Detective Ramirez, and I need to speak with you as soon as possible. We've analyzed the devices found in your apartment, and there are some developments you should be aware of. Could we meet you somewhere in the next hour?" I gave her Jessica's address, and the detective promised they would arrive shortly. After hanging up, I paced nervously around Jessica's living room, unable to sit still. "What do you think they found?" Jessica asked, bringing me a cup of coffee I knew I wouldn't be able to drink. "I don't know, but it can't be good if they're coming here this early." True to her word, within the hour there was a firm knock at Jessica's door. Two plainclothes detectives showed their badges: Detective Wilson, a tall black woman with short cropped hair and intense eyes, and Detective Ramirez, a middle-aged Latino man with a serious expression. "Ms. Parker," Detective Wilson began once we were seated in Jessica's living room, "the surveillance equipment we recovered from your apartment is highly sophisticated and expensive, not the kind of thing typically used in ordinary break-ins or voyeurism cases. These devices were broadcasting to a receiver," Detective Ramirez continued, opening a folder containing photographs of the equipment. "Our tech unit was able to determine that the signal was being transmitted to a location within half a mile of your building. The implication was clear: whoever placed those cameras wanted to watch me in real time, and they were doing it from somewhere nearby." "Do you have any idea who might have done this?" Detective Wilson asked, her gaze steady. I took a deep breath and told them about Mark Donovan, his obsessive behavior after my rejection, the workplace issues that led to his termination, and the disturbing social media posts I'd discovered overnight. "He was always intense," I explained, "but I never thought he would go this far. I mean, breaking into my apartment, installing cameras, it seems extreme even for him." Detective Wilson made notes as I spoke, occasionally exchanging glances with her partner. "Has Mr. Donovan made any direct threats to you?" she asked. "Not explicitly," I admitted. "It was more a pattern of behavior that made me uncomfortable, showing up where I would be, sending unwanted gifts, continuing to contact me after being told to stop." "Classic stalking behavior," Detective Ramirez observed. "It often escalates when the stalker feels they're losing control or connection to their target." "Ms. Parker," Detective Wilson said, leaning forward slightly, "based on what you've told us and the evidence we've gathered, we've already obtained a search warrant for a residence we believe is connected to this case." My breath caught. "Mark's apartment?" She nodded. "We have officers preparing to execute that warrant this morning. In the meantime, we'd like you to come to the station to provide a more detailed statement." As I was processing this information, my phone rang. Ryan, calling to let me know his flight had landed and he was taking a taxi directly to Jessica's. "My boyfriend is on his way here," I told the detectives. "Can I meet you at the station after he arrives? I don't want to be alone right now." They agreed to wait, and within 30 minutes Ryan burst through Jessica's door, immediately pulling me into a tight embrace. I clung to him, finally allowing myself to break down in the safety of his arms. "I've got you," he murmured into my hair. "You're safe now." After bringing Ryan up to speed, we drove to the police station where I spent the next 3 hours providing a detailed statement. I described my history with Mark, every interaction I could remember, and all the incidents that had made me uncomfortable. The detective showed me photographs of the camera equipment, asking if I recognized any of the devices or had noticed them before. While I was still being interviewed, Detective Wilson was called away. When she returned, her expression had changed. "We've executed the search warrant," she informed us. "I think you should know what we found." She placed several photographs on the table before me. They showed a room in what I assumed was Mark's apartment. One wall was covered with monitors displaying different views of my apartment, my living room, bedroom, bathroom, kitchen. The images turned my stomach. "These screens were active and recording when our officers entered," she explained gently. "There was also a significant amount of photographic material and written documentation that suggests the surveillance has been ongoing for approximately 2 months. 2 months for 8 weeks. Someone had been watching my most private moments." I closed my eyes, fighting back nausea. "We've arrested Mark Donovan," Detective Wilson continued. "He's being charged with breaking and entering, illegal surveillance, stalking, and several other related offenses. The district attorney will likely add more charges as we process all the evidence." Ryan's hand tightened around mine. "What happens now?" he asked, his voice tight with controlled anger. "We'll need Ms. Parker to identify some items recovered from the suspect's residence," Detective Ramirez explained, "and we'll need to take additional statements as the case develops." "Will she need to testify?" Ryan pressed. "Potentially, but that's far down the road. For now, our priority is ensuring Ms. Parker's safety and building a solid case." After leaving the police station, we met with a victim advocate named Sarah who explained the process of obtaining an emergency protective order. She walked me through the paperwork, explaining each section with patience and compassion. "A protective order is an important legal tool," she explained, "but it's also important to take practical safety measures. I'd recommend changing your locks immediately and having your apartment checked for any additional surveillance devices we might have missed." As we were preparing to leave, Detective Wilson approached with a final update. "The tech team just confirmed that Donovan had duplicate keys made for your apartment," she said quietly. "They found them in his possession during the arrest. We believe he may have obtained them by temporarily taking your keys, possibly from your gym bag or purse, and making copies before returning them." This new information sent a fresh wave of violation through me. How many times had he been in my apartment without my knowledge? How long had he been planning this? "One more thing," Detective Wilson added. "We've only begun processing his computer, but there appear to be extensive journals documenting his observations of you, dating back nearly 6 months before the cameras were installed. This wasn't a spontaneous act, it was calculated and planned over a long period." As we left the station, the bright afternoon sunlight felt at odds with the darkness that had descended over my life. Ryan held me close as we walked to his car, but I couldn't shake the feeling that eyes were still watching me even now. "I don't think I can ever go back to that apartment," I whispered as we drove away from the station. "You don't have to," Ryan assured me. "We'll figure something out. The important thing is that you're safe now." But despite his reassurance, I wondered if I would ever truly feel safe again. Ryan and I checked into a hotel that evening. Neither of us wanted to return to my apartment, and his place felt too far away from the police station if they needed me again. The hotel room was clean and anonymous, but even there I found myself checking corners for cameras and jumping at every sound in the hallway. "Try to get some rest," Ryan urged, setting up his laptop on the small desk. "I'll stay up and keep watch." Though exhausted, sleep came in fitful bursts, interrupted by nightmares where shadowy figures stood over my bed watching me with cold, calculating eyes. I woke several times gasping for air, only Ryan's steady presence anchoring me to reality. Morning brought a call from Detective Wilson. She sounded energized, almost excited. "Ms. Parker, we've been monitoring Mark Donovan's activities since his release on bail yesterday evening." "He's out," I gasped, panic rising in my throat. Despite the protective order, the thought of Mark walking free sent chills through me. "Under strict conditions," she assured me, "ankle monitor, surrender of passport, and explicit instructions to stay at least 500 feet from you and your residence. But here's what's interesting: we set up surveillance on him and our team observed him accessing a storage unit late last night." And I prompted, my hand tightening around the phone. "We've obtained another warrant for that storage unit. Given what we've already discovered, we have reason to believe it may contain additional evidence related to his stalking activities." She asked if I could come to the station later that day to review some of the evidence they'd collected and potentially identify personal items that might have been taken from my apartment. Ryan insisted on accompanying me, his protective instincts in overdrive. At the station, we were led to a small conference room where Detective Wilson waited with several evidence boxes. "Ms. Parker, I want to prepare you," she began carefully. "What we found in Mark Donovan's apartment and storage unit goes beyond what we initially suspected." She opened the first box and removed a manila folder. Inside were dozens of photographs of me at work, shopping, jogging, having dinner with Ryan, even visiting my parents in their suburban home 2 months ago. The photos spanned different seasons, suggesting they'd been taken over a period of at least 6 months. These were meticulously organized and dated, Detective Wilson explained, her tone professional but gentle. There were over 500 images in total. 500, the number stunned me. How had I never noticed being photographed so many times? The next box contained items I immediately recognized: a scarf I thought I'd lost at a restaurant, an earring I assumed had fallen out during a commute, a half-empty bottle of my perfume. "He was taking your belongings," Detective Ramirez observed from the doorway, "creating a collection." Most disturbing were the journal's 5 leather-bound notebooks filled with detailed observations of my daily routines, preferences, and habits. Mark had documented everything from my coffee order to the brand of shampoo I used, interspersed with increasingly obsessive and disturbing fantasies about our future together. The entries become more erratic and controlling over time, Detective Wilson noted, turning pages carefully with gloved hands. The surveillance equipment appears to have been installed after he wrote about needing to know everything about you and protect you from yourself and others. The final box contained technical equipment, additional cameras, listening devices, and a sophisticated computer setup that had been seized from the storage unit. "He was monitoring your phone as well," Detective Ramirez explained. "We found spyware on the backup copies of your data. He had access to your text messages, emails, photos, even your location in real time." I felt physically ill. The invasion of privacy extended to every aspect of my life, digital and physical. Nothing had been truly private. "There's more," Detective Wilson said, her expression grave. "The storage unit contained what can only be described as a shrine dedicated to you, including plans for what he called our home, architectural drawings of a remote cabin with concerning features." "What kind of features?" Ryan asked, his voice tight. "Security measures that would make it virtually impossible to leave without his knowledge or permission," she replied carefully, along with a detailed timeline leading to what he called Extraction Day, scheduled for next month. The implication was unmistakable. Mark had been planning to abduct me. Just as this horrifying reality was sinking in, Detective Wilson's phone rang. After a brief conversation, she turned to us with renewed urgency. "Mark Donovan has just violated his bail conditions. His ankle monitor shows he's heading in this direction toward the police station." Everything happened quickly after that. Officers moved me to a secure room while others positioned themselves at the station entrances. Within minutes, there was commotion in the lobby, and Detective Wilson returned looking both concerned and grimly satisfied. "Donovan attempted to enter the station with a concealed weapon," she informed us. "He's been arrested again, this time with no possibility of bail. According to the officers who took him into custody, he was ranting about needing to save you from police manipulation." The next few hours passed in a blur of statements, paperwork, and preparations for what would likely be a complex legal case. The district attorney assigned to the case, a formidable woman named Catherine Chen, met with me briefly to outline the charges against Mark: breaking and entering, illegal surveillance, stalking, theft, cyber intrusion, possession of a concealed weapon, violation of a protective order, and attempted kidnapping. Based on the evidence from the storage unit, she listed efficiently. Given the extensiveness of the evidence and the clear escalation of his behavior, we're seeking maximum penalties. "Will I have to testify?" I asked, dreading the thought of facing Mark in court. "Possibly, but given the overwhelming physical evidence, there's a good chance his attorney will advise him to accept a plea deal," Ms. Chen explained. "Either way, my office will support you through every step of this process." As evening approached, Detective Wilson suggested we consider relocating temporarily. "Just until we're certain there are no accomplices or additional threats," she advised. "Sometimes these individuals share information with like-minded people online." The thought that others might have seen the surveillance footage of me was yet another violation, another layer of horror to process. "We can stay with my parents," Ryan suggested. "They're out of state. He wouldn't know to look for us there." As we prepared to leave the station under police escort, Detective Wilson handed me a business card with her personal cell number written on the back. "Day or night," she said firmly, "this case is my priority." In the car, as Ryan drove us toward the interstate and away from the city that no longer felt like home, I stared out the window at the passing buildings and wondered how many other women were being watched right now, unaware of the predatory eyes documenting their every move. Planning, waiting. "We'll get through this," Ryan said, reaching for my hand across the console, "one day at a time." I nodded, wanting to believe him, but knowing that some violations leave permanent scars invisible but ever present. The cameras had been discovered and removed, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being observed, exposed, vulnerable. The physical surveillance had ended, but the psychological effects would linger long after Mark Donovan was sentenced and imprisoned. As we crossed the state line, putting distance between us and the nightmare in Boston, I closed my eyes and tried to imagine a future where shadows didn't make me flinch and unexpected sounds didn't send my heart racing. It seemed impossibly distant, but it was all I had to hold on to the hope that someday I might feel safe again. 3 months after the arrest, I stood in the empty living room of my new apartment, surrounded by unpacked moving boxes and the fresh scent of paint. The space was smaller than my old condo but located in a secure building with 24-hour security and a state-of-the-art surveillance system that's, ironically, made me feel safer rather than threatened. After the evidence processing was complete, I had sold my condo at a loss, unable to bear the thought of living in a space that had been so thoroughly violated. Every corner, every wall held memories of hidden cameras and unwanted observation. Some things, I realized, could not be reclaimed. Ryan had been my rock throughout the ordeal, patient and supportive as I navigated the complicated landscape of trauma recovery. My twice-weekly therapy sessions with Dr. Levine had become a crucial part of my healing process, providing a safe space to process the fear, anger, and sense of violation that sometimes threatened to overwhelm me. Healing isn't linear, Dr. Levine had reminded me during our last session. Some days will be harder than others, but each step forward matters, no matter how small. The legal proceedings against Mark had moved surprisingly quickly. Faced with overwhelming evidence, his attorney had advised him to accept a plea deal. He was now serving a 15-year sentence with mandatory psychiatric treatment and would be registered as a sex offender upon release. The judge had been unsparing in her sentencing remarks, describing his actions as among the most disturbing cases of stalking and violation of privacy this court has ever seen. I had chosen to deliver a victim impact statement at the sentencing hearing, finding an unexpected strength in directly addressing the man who had upended my life. "You didn't just invade my home," I had told him, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands. "You invaded every aspect of my existence. You took from me my sense of safety, my privacy, and my trust in the world around me, but you did not and will not take my future or my ability to heal." Mark had sat emotional as throughout my statement, his eyes fixed on a point somewhere above my head, refusing to acknowledge the harm he had caused. His lack of remorse only reinforced my belief that the lengthy sentence was appropriate and necessary. In the months since, I had gradually rebuilt my life piece by piece. I had changed jobs, accepting a position at a smaller agency with a shorter commute and a supportive team who understood my need for privacy and security. My new boss had been remarkably accommodating, allowing me flexible hours to attend therapy and legal appointments. Today marked a significant milestone. My first night in the new apartment. Ryan had gone to pick up dinner, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the tangible symbols of my fresh start. My phone chimed with a notification from the support group app Dr. Levine had recommended. The group, specifically for survivors of stalking and surveillance, had become an unexpected source of comfort and understanding. Many of the members had experienced similar violations and understood the unique challenges of recovery in ways even my closest friends and family couldn't fully grasp. I had initially joined as a silent observer, reading others' stories and taking comfort in not being alone. Gradually, I had begun sharing pieces of my own experience, finding that articulating my trauma helped diminish its power over me. Last week, I had volunteered to speak at an awareness event organized by the group, my first step toward the advocacy work that increasingly called to me. The statistics were staggering. According to the materials I'd been reviewing for my presentation, approximately 1 in 6 women and 1 in 17 men would experience stalking in their lifetime. The psychological impact often lasted years beyond the stalking itself, affecting victims' personal relationships, professional lives, and basic sense of security in the world. Yet public understanding of stalking remained limited, with many still viewing it as merely unwanted attention rather than the serious crime it was. I had begun to see my painful experience as an opportunity to raise awareness and advocate for stronger laws and better support systems for victims. Ryan returned with dinner and a small housewarming gift, a state-of-the-art white noise machine. For better sleep, he explained with a gentle smile, knowing that nightmares and insomnia still plagued me regularly. We ate sitting cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by boxes labeled in my careful handwriting, new labels on new boxes containing carefully selected belongings. I had donated or discarded much of my old furniture and many personal items, unable to shake the feeling that they had been contaminated by Mark's observation. I submitted the application today, Ryan mentioned casually between bites of pasta. For the apartment down the hall? Asked, though I already knew the answer. He nodded. No pressure, I just want to be close if you need me, or even if you don't. Our relationship had deepened through the crisis, but we had both agreed that maintaining separate living spaces was important for now. I needed to reclaim my independence, to prove to myself that I could feel safe on my own again. Ryan understood this without explanation, one of the many reasons I loved him. I'd like that, I replied honestly, being close but not smothered. He reached across the makeshift picnic to squeeze my hand, one day at a time, remember. It had become our mantra over the past months, a reminder that healing couldn't be rushed and that small victories deserve celebration. After dinner, as we unpacked kitchen essentials, my phone rang with a call from Detective Wilson. She checked in periodically, providing updates on the case and ensuring I felt supported by the justice system. Today, her call carried news. The tech team finished analyzing the final batch of Donovan's electronic devices, she informed me. I wanted you to know that all recovered images and videos have been secured and will remain sealed by court order. Your privacy is protected. It was a small comfort but meaningful nonetheless. The thought of those intimate moments of my life being viewed by investigators and legal teams had been yet another source of distress. Thank you for everything, Detective, I said sincerely. I don't know if I could have gotten through this without your support. You're stronger than you realize, Emily, she replied, but I'm glad we could help bring you some justice. After we hung up, I resumed unpacking, finding unexpected emotional significance in simple acts: arranging books on shelves, positioning lamps for optimal lighting, deciding where each piece of artwork should hang. This space was mine, every decision solely mine to make. No hidden eyes would watch these private moments of creating home. As evening settled into night, Ryan and I sat on the small balcony overlooking the city lights. The air was crisp with early autumn, carrying the promise of change and new beginnings. I've been thinking about what you said last week, Ryan began, about wanting to find meaning in what happened. I nodded, watching the distant headlights trace patterns on the highway below. I can't change what happened to me, but maybe I can help change things for someone else. The speaking engagement next month was just the beginning. I had been researching advocacy organizations focused on strengthening stalking laws and improving law enforcement training. My marketing background provided useful skills for raising awareness and crafting compelling educational materials. You'll make a difference, Ryan said with certainty. You already have. My phone chimed again, a message from Jessica with a photo of the security system she'd just installed in her apartment. Taking a page from your book, her text read, better safe than sorry. The ripple effect of awareness spreading through my social circle had been an unexpected positive outcome. Friends and colleagues had become more security conscious, more aware of their digital footprints, more attuned to warning signs of potentially obsessive behavior. Later, as I prepared for bed in my new bedroom, a space never violated by unwanted surveillance, I paused before the mirror to study my reflection. The physical changes were subtle. I had cut my hair shorter, changed my style slightly, but the transformation in my eyes was profound. There was a wariness there that hadn't existed before, but also a depth and resilience born of surviving the unthinkable. I had learned lessons no one should have to learn: that privacy is precious and vulnerability can be weaponized, that safety is never guaranteed but must be consciously created and maintained, that healing happens in tiny increments rather than dramatic leaps. Most importantly, I had learned that even in our most isolated moments of fear and pain, connection remains our greatest source of strength and recovery. The support of Ryan, Jessica, Detective Wilson, Dr. Levine, and the survivor community had formed a safety net that caught me when I was falling and gave me space to find my footing again. As I settled into my new bed, under new sheets in this new beginning, I thought about all the women out there still being watched without their knowledge, and all those who would face similar violations in the future. Tomorrow I would continue unpacking and settling in. Next week I would return to work and therapy and the gradual process of rebuilding my sense of security. but beyond that stretched a new purpose, using my voice and experience to shine light on a crime that thrives in shadows and silence. The path ahead would not be easy, but it offered something essential to my healing: the transformation of helpless victimhood into empowered advocacy. I drifted toward sleep with newfound determination. My story wasn't over, it was evolving into something stronger and more meaningful than before, and perhaps in sharing it, I could help ensure that fewer women would have to experience the violation I had endured. If my story has resonated with you in any way, please take a moment to reflect on your own security and privacy. Have you ever experienced something that made you feel unsafe in your own space? What steps do you take to protect yourself? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your insight might help someone else recognize warning signs or take precautions they hadn't considered. Don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories of survival and resilience, and hit that like button if this narrative helped raise your awareness about stalking and privacy violations. Remember, staying informed is staying safe. Thank you for listening to my journey, and may you always feel secure in your personal spaces.